Another woman walked up and said, "Sister, why don't you go and adopt a child? At least people will stop laughing at you." Chinwe forced a weak smile. But inside, she thought, if only it were that easy. Adoption was not common in the village. People believed blood was stronger than love. If she brought in a child that was not hers, the villagers would still whisper. They would call the child borrowed. Once upon a time, in a small village, surrounded by tall palm trees and red earth roads, there lived a woman named Chinwe. She was in her late 30s, a woman of beauty and grace, with smooth dark skin and eyes that often carried both hope and sorrow. Chinwe had everything that made people admire her. She was hardworking, respectful, gentle in her speech, and caring to anyone around her. But there was one thing missing in her life: a child of her own. For many years, she had prayed, fasted, visited hospitals, and sought help from different pastors. Yet, her womb remained empty. In her village, where children were seen as a crown to marriage, Chinwe's situation was seen as a great shame. People whispered behind her back. Some mocked her to her face. Others avoided her, as if barrenness was a disease that could be passed by touch. Chinwe had once been married to a man named Okeke. At first, their love was strong. They laughed together, ate together, and dreamed of raising children in their small house by the roadside. But as the years passed without a child's cry in their home, Okeke's patience thinned. His family members pressured him, telling him that a man without children had no future. They called Chinwe names, saying she had brought a curse upon him. "Okeke, you cannot waste your life with this woman," his mother told him one evening. "Others are carrying grandchildren on their laps, and I am here, growing old with nothing. Leave her. Find another woman who can give you sons." At first, Okeke resisted. He still cared for Chinwe, but the voices of his family grew louder than his love. After 12 years of waiting, he abandoned her, leaving the small house they had built together. He left without looking back, taking only his clothes. His mother even told the villagers that her son had escaped bondage. For Chinwe, the pain was unbearable. The man she loved, the man she had hoped would stand by her, had chosen to walk away because of something she had no power to change. She cried day and night. She cried until her eyes became swollen. But no matter how much she wept, her womb remained silent. Every morning, Chinwe would wake before the cock crowed. She would sweep the compound, fetch water from the stream, and prepare cassava for fufu or gari to sell in the market. Her life was filled with work, but her heart was filled with emptiness. As she walked through the village, carrying a basin on her head, children would run past her, laughing. Their tiny feet raised dust on the red road. Their mothers would call after them, scolding or laughing. Each time Chinwe saw them, a knife cut through her chest. She imagined herself holding a child's hand, shouting after them with joy. But her reality was loneliness. Some villagers mocked her openly. "Look at her," one woman whispered loudly to another at the market. "All these years, she cannot even carry a baby. What kind of woman is that?" Another added. If she had prayed well, God would have answered her. Maybe she did something in her youth that angered God. Chinwe heard all these words, but she kept quiet. She had learned to bow her head and walk on, but inside her heart bled. At night, when the village grew quiet and the crickets sang their songs, Chinwe would kneel in her small room, lifting her hands to heaven. "God, why me?" she cried. "What have I done to deserve this shame? Did I offend you? Did I wrong anyone? Why have you closed my womb? Have mercy on me. Give me a child, even if it is just one. I will care for that child with all of me. Please, Lord, remember me." Sometimes her tears soaked her wrapper. Other times, she lay flat on the floor, weeping until sleep took her. The house felt too big for her. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of crickets at night or the crowing of roosters in the morning. When she cooked little portions because there was no one else to share the meal. Her neighbors noticed her sadness. Some pitied her, but many scorned her. Women with children avoided her as if she was cursed. When there were naming ceremonies in the village, Chinwe often stayed away. She could not bear to see women her age, even younger than her, carrying babies and being celebrated while she was whispered about as the barren one. Children sometimes asked her innocent but painful questions. "Auntie Chinwe, why don't you have a baby?" a little boy asked once. She forced a smile and replied softly, "Not every woman is given that gift, my child." But as the boy ran off, she turned away and cried. One particular night, the moon was bright, shining over the rooftops. Chinwe sat outside her house on a wooden bench. She looked up at the sky, watching the stars twinkle. The night breeze was cool, but her heart was heavy. She spoke out loud, as though God was sitting right beside her. "Father, I am tired of crying. I am tired of being called barren. People mock me, yet I keep holding on to you. You gave Hannah a son when she cried to you. You remembered Sarah in her old age. Why will you not remember me, your daughter? Even if my husband has abandoned me, will you also abandon me?" Her voice broke as she sobbed. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "Please, Lord, let life grow here. I will never stop praising you if you bless me." But silence answered her prayers. Only the sound of owls and night insects filled the air. She cried until her heart grew weak, then slowly went inside to sleep. The next day in the market, as Chinwe sold her cassava, two women passed by and looked at her. One shook her head. "Ah, so beautiful, yet wasted." The woman said, "All that beauty and no child to show for it." Chinwe's ears burnt, but she bent over her basin and continued selling. Later, another woman walked up and said, "Sister, why don't you go and adopt a child? At least people will stop laughing at you." Chinwe forced a weak smile, but inside, she thought, if only it were that easy. Adoption was not common in the village. People believed blood was stronger than love. If she brought in a child that was not hers, the villagers would still whisper. They would call the child borrowed. Chinwe wanted her own child, the fruit of her womb. Years went by. Chinwe continued living in quiet pain, her prayers never ceasing. She held on to hope, even though hope seemed thin. One particular morning, the sun had not yet risen. The sky was still gray. Chinwe tied her wrapper and carried a small basket, preparing to fetch firewood from the nearby bush. She often woke early to gather wood before the other women crowded the path. The air was cool, and the village was quiet except for the sound of birds waking from sleep. She walked down the narrow path, her slippers brushing against the grass. The bush was thick, with tall trees and shrubs on either side. As she walked deeper, suddenly, she stopped. There was a sound. At first, she thought it was the cry of a goat or maybe a bird. But no, it was different. The sound was soft, weak, and filled with sorrow. It came again. Chinwe froze. Her heart raced. She turned her head toward the direction of the sound. The sound of the cry continued to pierce through the still morning air. Chinwe's legs shook as she moved closer, her eyes darting through the thick leaves and tall grasses. The narrow bush path was familiar to her, but the sound that came from it was not. Her heart pounded heavily in her chest, each beat louder than the last. Could it really be what I think it is? She whispered to herself. She pushed aside some branches, her hands trembling as she tried to see more clearly. Then, there it was, a tiny figure, lying helplessly on the ground, wrapped in torn, dirty pieces of cloth. Chinwe gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes filled with tears at the sight before her. It was indeed a baby, a very small baby, with its face smeared with dust, its lips dry, and its cries weak as though strength was already leaving it. The baby kicked slightly, its thin legs showing signs of hunger and suffering. The cloth that covered the little one was nothing more than rags, damp with morning dew and full of patches of dirt. The child had clearly been left there to die. Chinwe dropped to her knees. Her tears flowed freely, running down her cheeks as she stretched her arms toward the infant. My God, who could do such a thing? She cried. Her hands trembled as she picked up the fragile child. She was scared, yet overwhelmed with compassion. The moment she felt the baby's tiny body against her chest, a strange warmth spread through her heart. The baby's cries softened, as if it felt safe in her arms. Chinwe clutched the child tightly, pressing it to her chest. She rocked it gently, her tears dripping onto the baby's forehead. Shh, you are safe now. Nobody will harm you again. As long as I live, you will not suffer, she whispered, though her voice shook with emotion. Her wrapper became wet as the baby drooled and whimpered softly. She could feel how weak and hungry the little one was, and her heart broke further. Chinwe looked around the bush, searching to see if someone was hiding nearby. She saw no one. Only the rustling of leaves and the sound of birds filled the air. Whoever abandoned the child was long gone. Slowly, she lifted the baby properly in her arms, holding it close to her bosom, and rose to her feet. Her legs still shook, but her steps grew firmer as she walked back to the village path. As she carried the baby, thoughts flooded her mind. Why here? Why in this bush? Who would abandon such an innocent child? She shook her head, tears flowing again. Maybe God himself placed this child here for me. Maybe he has answered me in his own way. Her hands clutched the baby more tightly as if she feared it could vanish. By the time she stepped back into the village, people had started to come out of their homes to begin the day. Women with basins on their heads passed by. Men stretched after sleep, and children played with sticks in the dust. When they saw Chinwe carrying the baby, they stopped and stared. Some pointed. Others came closer, whispering among themselves. What is that in her hand? One woman asked, Is that not a baby? Another replied in shock. Chinwe walked with her head held high, though her tears had not stopped. She moved straight to her compound, but the villagers quickly gathered around, their tongues sharp with words. Chinwe, whose baby is that? Where did you get it? One man demanded. She turned to face them, her arms still wrapped protectively around the child. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I found this child in the bush this morning, abandoned, left to die. I could not leave it there. The villagers gasped loudly. You mean somebody dumped a baby in the bush? Yes, I picked it up. I could not walk away, Chinwe said firmly, though her tears still fell. But not everyone shared her compassion. One woman folded her arms and hissed. So you want to carry another woman's problem into your house? Chinwe, instead of praying harder for your own. You are busy bringing in a stranger's curse. Another added mockingly. Do you know where that baby came from? Maybe it was born from evil. Maybe it was left there because of a bad omen. You want to carry it and call it your own? Foolish woman. The words stung, but Chinwe did not move. She pressed the baby closer, rocking it gently as it whimpered. Say what you like, she answered softly, but with courage. This child is innocent. I will not leave it to die in the bush. If the mother could throw it away, then I will take it in. Even if the world mocks me, I will raise this child. The crowd murmured loudly. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others laughed, and a few pitied her. Inside her small compound, Chinwe laid a clean wrapper on her bamboo bed. Carefully, she placed the baby on it and examined the little one closely. Its skin was dry, its lips cracked, and its small fists trembled. The sight brought fresh tears to Chinwe's eyes. She quickly boiled water, prepared pap, and carefully fed the baby with a spoon. The baby sucked weakly at first, then with more eagerness as life seemed to return. Watching the baby swallow brought a new kind of joy to Chinwe's heart. She felt something she had never felt before, a sense of purpose, a sense of motherhood. Her neighbors still gathered outside, gossiping. She heard their voices but ignored them. For the first time in many years, her house was filled with the sound of a child's cry, and that was enough for her. She cleaned the baby's body with warm water, removed the dirty rags, and wrapped it in one of her finest wrappers. She gazed at the child's tiny face, tracing the small nose and soft cheeks with her fingers. You are beautiful, she whispered. So small, yet so strong. You survived the cold night in the bush. You are a gift, not a curse. I believe God has answered me through you. As the baby slept peacefully for the first time, Chinwe sat beside the bed watching. She thought deeply about what to call the child. In her heart, she believed this moment was not an accident. After all her years of crying and praying, after all the shame and mockery, God had brought her to the bush at the exact time to hear the child's cry. This is not ordinary, she murmured to herself. Her lips curved into a smile, though tears still clung to her eyelashes. She lifted the baby again, pressing her lips to its forehead. I will give you a name, she whispered gently. A name that carries meaning. A name that will remind me every day that God is still merciful. She paused for a long while, looking into the child's small innocent face. Then, with trembling lips, she said, From today, you shall be called Amara. It means grace, because you are God's grace to me. Her tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of joy mixed with awe. She rocked the child gently and repeated the name over and over. Amara, my child, my grace, my miracle. Far away from Chinwe's small village, in the bustling city, with its tall buildings, busy roads, and glowing street lights, there lived a wealthy couple, Chief Obinna and his wife, Adaora. Chief Obinna was a respected businessman, known for his success in real estate and hospitality. His name opened doors. People bowed when they greeted him, not just because of his money, but because of his calm nature. He was a tall, strong man with broad shoulders, always neatly dressed in his expensive kaftans and polished shoes. His wife, Adaora, was his pride. She was a graceful woman, elegant in every sense. Her beauty turned heads anywhere she went. She carried herself with the poise of a queen. Yet her humility made her loved by all. After many years of waiting and prayers, she had finally been blessed with a child, a baby boy. This child was their treasure. His arrival had filled their mansion with laughter and songs. His cry was music to their ears. his tiny smile worth more than gold. They gave him the best care, with a nanny who watched him round the clock. They never allowed him to lack anything. But fate had a different plan. It was a cool evening. Chief Obinna, Adaora, the nanny, and the baby were returning home in their black SUV. The driver whistled softly as he steered through a lonely road on the outskirts of the city. Tall trees lined both sides of the road, their branches swaying gently in the night wind. Inside the car, Adaora cradled her baby while the nanny sat beside her. Chief Obinna spoke quietly on the phone about a business deal. The atmosphere was peaceful, but that peace did not last. From the shadows, a group of armed men suddenly rushed onto the road. Their faces were covered with black masks. They waved guns in the air, shouting. The driver panicked and hit the brakes hard, the screech of the tires echoing through the night. "Stay down!" Chief Obinna shouted, pulling Adaora to the floor of the car. The nanny screamed, holding the baby tight against her chest. The kidnappers surrounded the SUV, banging the windows with their weapons. "Open the door! Get out!" they barked. Before anyone could react, one of them smashed the glass with the butt of his gun. The driver tried to reverse, but bullets rained on the car. He froze, raising his hands in surrender. "Out! Now!" another shouted. In the chaos, the nanny opened her door and bolted out, clutching the baby. Fear drove her feet as she dashed into the nearby bush. She thought she could escape with the child. Branches tore at her clothes, but she didn't stop. Behind her, gunshots cracked. Adaora screamed as rough hands dragged her out of the car. Chief Obinna struggled, but they struck his head with a heavy object. He collapsed onto the ground. The nanny's heart pounded as she ran deeper into the bush. The baby wailed loudly in her arms. She stumbled over roots, her slippers flying off. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in front of her. One of the kidnappers had followed. She let out a piercing scream. Her legs shook, and in her fear, she tripped on a rock. She fell heavily, the baby slipping from her grasp. The infant rolled onto the grass, still crying. "Please, don't kill me," she begged. The man raised his weapon, but voices from the road called him back. "Leave her! We got what we came for." He spat on the ground and turned away, disappearing into the darkness. The nanny, bruised and terrified, scrambled to her feet. In her confusion and fear, she fled blindly, forgetting the exact spot where the baby had fallen. The child's cries grew fainter as she ran farther and farther away. When the noise of the attackers faded, the lonely road fell into silence again. The kidnappers vanished into the night with the driver and valuables. Chief Obinna lay unconscious, his head bleeding. Adaora sobbed uncontrollably, her hands tied behind her back. By the time local vigilantes and police officers arrived, the attackers were gone. They rushed Obinna to the hospital, while Adaora kept shouting the same thing through her tears. "My baby! Where is my baby?" The nanny was later found wandering aimlessly, shaking like a leaf. She was in shock, her words scattered, unable to explain properly what had happened in the bush. All she could repeat was, the baby, I lost him," he cried. "I couldn't find him again." Adaora nearly collapsed when she heard this. She clung to her husband's stretcher, wailing, No, it's not true. My baby cannot be gone. He cannot be gone." But the truth was painful. The child had vanished. Chief Obinna survived his injury, though he carried a deep scar on his forehead. As soon as he regained strength, he poured all his resources into searching for the missing child. Police officers combed the bush for days. Posters were printed with the baby's picture, pasted on every wall and market square in the city. Newspapers carried the headline, "Wealthy couple's baby missing after kidnap attack." Radio stations spread the news. Rewards were offered for any information. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers prayed for the family, but no trace of the baby was found. Some people whispered that perhaps wild animals had carried the child away. Others believed the kidnappers had taken him, even though no ransom demand was made. Many thought it was a spiritual attack. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Hope faded. Adaora's life changed completely. The once lively woman who filled the home with laughter became a shadow of herself. She refused to eat, refused to dress up, refused to leave her room. She sat for hours on the baby's cot, running her fingers over the empty mattress. She touched the baby's small clothes, pressing them to her chest as tears soaked her face. Sometimes she would scream at night, waking the household. "Bring me my child! Somebody give me back my baby!" Her cries echoed through the large house like a haunting song. Chief Obinna tried to comfort her, but he himself was broken. He felt powerless. He was a man of influence, a man of wealth, but all his power could not bring back his son. He watched as his wife's body grew thin, her eyes swollen from constant crying. He called doctors, therapists, pastors, anyone he thought could help. But Adaora's wound was deep, and no medicine could heal it. The once joyful mansion now felt like a grave. Before the tragedy, the sound of a baby's cry filled every corner. The staff would smile whenever they heard it, saying the child brought life into the house. Now, there was only silence. The toys remained untouched. The cradle sat empty. The walls seemed to echo with the ghost of the baby's laughter that once was. Chief Obinna spent long nights in his study, his head in his hands, wondering where he had gone wrong. He blamed himself for not protecting his family better. He cursed the night of the attack. He begged God for a miracle, but none came. Sometimes, Adaora would wander into the garden barefoot, her hair unkempt, her wrapper untied at the shoulder. She would sit on the grass for hours, staring blankly at nothing. When anyone tried to speak to her, she whispered only one word, "My baby." Months passed. Life in the city moved on. But for Chief Obinna and Adaora, time seemed to stand still. Their friends visited less often, unable to bear the heavy silence in the mansion. Those who came offered words of encouragement, but the couple heard little of it. The posters faded from walls. The newspapers stopped talking about the case. The police gave up, saying there were no more leads. But in their hearts, Obinna and Adaora refused to accept that their baby was gone forever. They clung to the hope, however faint, that one day, somehow, they would find him. For now, all that remained was silence, sorrow, and unanswered questions. Their home, once filled with joy, now echoed only with grief. The morning after Chinwe named the baby Amara, she woke before the rooster crowed. The small child lay sleeping beside her on the bamboo bed, wrapped in the finest cloth she owned. For the first time in many years, her room no longer felt empty. The sound of gentle breathing from the baby filled her heart with peace. She bent down and kissed Amara's forehead. "Good morning, my little one. God has given you to me. I will never let you suffer again." Caring for a baby was not easy. Chinwe soon discovered the challenges that mothers carried every day. At night, Amara often woke crying, her tiny voice echoing through the quiet compound. Chinwe would rise from her mat quickly, rocking the baby in her arms, whispering lullabies she remembered from her childhood. "Hush, my child. Sleep, my child. You are safe with me," she sang softly. Sometimes Amara cried for hours, refusing to sleep. Chinwe would pace the small room, her back aching, but she never complained. Her arms grew tired, yet she held the baby close, humming until the cries faded into quiet breathing again. Other nights, Amara's stomach rumbled with hunger. Chinwe, though poor, sacrificed her own meals to feed the child. When she had little food, she ate only a small portion, saving the rest to prepare pap for the baby. Hunger beat her stomach, but when she saw Amara's tiny lips moving eagerly as she swallowed, joy covered her pain. The villagers did not stay silent. When they saw Chinwe carrying Amara on her back with a wrapper tied firmly around her waist, they whispered loudly, "See her, parading another woman's child as if it is her own." One woman said at the stream. Another added, "She has brought trouble into her house. Who knows where that baby came from? It may be an evil spirit in disguise." A man at the market shook his head. "She should have left the child where she found it. What if its mother comes tomorrow to claim it? What will she do then?" Chinwe heard their words. Sometimes she went home and wept quietly, but each time she looked at Amara, she wiped her tears and stood firm. "They may mock me," she told herself, "but they do not understand. This child is mine. God has given her to me." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Chinwe and Amara became inseparable. Everywhere Chinwe went, she carried the baby. At the market, people soon recognized the sight of her with the child tied to her back. At the stream, she washed clothes with Amara beside her. At night, she laid the baby on her chest, listening to the soft heartbeats that gave her hope. She sang lullabies, stories in songs passed down from her mother. She spoke words of love, whispering into Amara's ears, "You are my treasure, my blessing, my answer. You will grow to be strong. You will bring joy to my days." Even though Amara could not yet understand, the child's tiny smile whenever Chinwe spoke gave her strength. Sometimes, when Amara laughed for no reason, Chinwe laughed too. For years she had lived in silence, but now her compound was filled with life again. Raising a child required money, and Chinwe had very little. She worked harder than ever. She planted cassava and maize on her small farm, carried bundles of firewood from the bush, and sold gari at the market. Many times, she returned home with aching legs and blistered palms, but when she saw Amara's eyes light up, she felt her strength return. On days when she earned little, she bought food for the baby first. She would tell herself, "Let me go hungry, but not my child." Neighbors sometimes noticed her sacrifices. An older woman once asked, "Chinwe, you are lean these days. Do you eat well?" Chinwe smiled faintly. "As long as Amara is fine, I am fine." Though she struggled, she found a new kind of happiness. She no longer felt the emptiness that once haunted her nights. Over time, even those who mocked her began to notice her courage. They saw how she carried the child everywhere, how she worked tirelessly without complaint, how she gave Amara the best care despite her poverty. Some villagers began to respect her quietly. A few even brought her small gifts. A woman at the market once handed her a wrapper. "Take this, Chinwe. It will serve as clothing for your daughter." Another neighbor gave her palm oil and beans, whispering, "May God bless you for your kindness." The same tongues that had mocked her slowly began to admire her strength. Though not everyone admitted it openly, many knew Chinwe's love for the child was pure. Months passed, and Amara grew stronger. Her cheeks became round, her eyes brighter. She giggled often, filling Chinwe's compound with music sweeter than any song. One bright afternoon, As Chinwe washed clothes under the sun, Amara sat on a mat beside her, clapping her small hands. Suddenly, she made a sound. Ma! Ma! Chinwe froze, soap slipping from her hand. She turned quickly, her eyes wide. Say it again, my love, she whispered, rushing to the child. Amara clapped again and said it louder. Ma! Tears filled Chinwe's eyes. She lifted the child high into the air, laughing through her sobs. She called me mother. She called me. She pressed the child against her chest, her heart overflowing. Years of shame and sorrow melted away in that single moment. Not long after, Amara tried to stand. Chinwe guided her gently, holding her small hands. The little girl staggered, almost falling, but Chinwe caught her quickly. Come on, my child. One step, just one step, she encouraged softly. With determination, Amara took a shaky step, then another. Chinwe clapped with joy. Yes, that's my daughter. Walk to mama. Day by day, the child's steps grew firmer. Soon, she ran around the compound, laughing. Her small feet kicked up dust as she chased chickens, her laughter ringing like bells. Chinwe's neighbors watched, some smiling, some shaking their heads. But Chinwe paid them no mind. Her heart was full. Evenings were no longer silent in Chinwe's house. After a long day, she would sit outside Amara on her lap, watching the moon rise. She told her stories, pointed at the stars, and sang until the child fell asleep. Whenever Amara laughed, Chinwe laughed louder. Whenever Amara clapped, Chinwe clapped too. The sound of happiness returned to her life. After years of emptiness, the woman once called Barren was now called Mama Amara. Children in the village sometimes ran into her compound to play with the little girl. Some women admired how well the child looked, whispering that Chinwe had done what many would not dare to do. For Chinwe, nothing else mattered. She had Amara, and that was enough. Her joy had returned. Raising Amara was not easy. Every day, Chinwe carried the weight of motherhood on her shoulders. She had no husband, no family to help, no wealth to lean on. What she had was a determined heart, willing hands, and an unshakable love for the child she called her own. From morning until night, she worked endlessly. She fetched firewood from deep in the bush, tied bundles with rope, and carried them on her head to the market. The wood was heavy, her neck often sore, but she endured it. Every coin she earned went into feeding and clothing Amara. When she was not selling firewood, she worked on other people's farms. She bent under the hot sun, clearing weeds with a hoe, sweat running down her face. She harvested yams, peeled cassava, or weeded ridges, earning small wages. At the end of the day, her body ached. But when she bought bread or beans for Amara with her pay, she smiled through the pain. Sometimes, Chinwe fell sick. Fever burned her skin, cough shook her body, or waist pain made her unable to stand upright. But even in sickness, she thought first of Amara. One rainy day, she returned from the bush carrying firewood. The sky had grown dark quickly, thunder rolling above. She tied Amara on her back with a wrapper, shielding the child with a piece of cloth. As the rain poured, she struggled to balance the heavy load on her head. The muddy path became slippery. Her legs wobbled, her chest pounded. Halfway home, her body gave up. She stumbled, the firewood falling to the ground. She collapsed onto her knees in the mud. Rain beat down on her face, soaking her wrapper. Yet even in that moment of weakness, she refused to let go of Amara. Her hands tightened around the child, protecting her from the cold rain. Chinwe bent over, covering Amara with her body as the storm raged. God, give me strength, she whispered through trembling lips. I cannot leave this child. She is all I have. She stayed that way until the rain softened. With all the strength she could gather, she rose again, lifted the load back onto her head, and staggered home. Her body shook with exhaustion, but Amara was safe, warm against her chest. That night, when she lay on her mat, she pressed Amara close and whispered, "No matter what happens, I will never let go of you." As time passed, Amara grew taller and stronger. Her once fragile body became healthy, her cheeks round, her eyes shining with life. She loved to follow Chinwe everywhere, sometimes carrying a small basket beside her mother. Villagers often stopped to admire her. "This child is beautiful," they said. "She looks like a child born in wealth, not in suffering." Chinwe smiled quietly, each time, her heart swelling with pride. She knew the child was special. At home, Chinwe told Amara stories by moonlight, tales of wise tortoises, brave hunters, and kind maidens. Amara laughed at the funny parts, clapped at the clever endings, and sometimes asked for the stories to be repeated. Their nights were filled with warmth, even when their stomachs were empty. When Amara became old enough, Chinwe decided she must go to school. It was not easy to afford. The fees were small compared to the city. But to Chinwe, it was still a heavy burden. She saved every coin, cut down on her own meals, and sold extra bundles of firewood. Finally, she bought a second-hand uniform from the market, washed it until it shone, and sewed the torn edges neatly. She purchased a pair of sandals and a few books. On Amara's first morning, Chinwe woke early, bathed her carefully, and dressed her in the uniform. She tied her hair with ribbons she had made from old cloth. Tears filled Chinwe's eyes as she looked at her daughter, now ready to join other children. "You are my pride," she said softly. "Go and learn, my daughter. Make me proud." Amara hugged her tightly before running to join other children on the path to school. In school, Amara's brightness amazed her teachers. She listened carefully, answered questions boldly, and learned faster than many others. Each term, she returned home with good results, her name always among the best. One evening, she ran home waving her report card. "Mama, see, I came first in my class." Chinwe's hands trembled as she held the paper. Tears blurred her sight, but joy filled her heart. She lifted Amara into her arms, spinning her around despite her tired body. "My daughter, you are the light of my life. You are everything I prayed for." The neighbors, who once mocked Chinwe, now admired her openly. They whispered to one another, "Look at how well the child is doing. Chinwe has truly done well." Each night, Chinwe watched Amara as she read by the small lantern. She often sat quietly, studying her daughter's face. How could anyone abandon such a child? She wondered. She's a jewel, a gift from heaven. She often sacrificed her rest, working late into the night to prepare gari or fry akara to sell in the morning. She wanted to ensure Amara never lacked school fees, books, or food. On days when Amara tried to stop her, saying, "Mama, rest, let me help," Chinwe only smiled. "Your work is to study. My work is to provide. One day, when you are great, you will understand." Amara would hug her, whispering, "I love you, Mama," and Chinwe's heart would melt, her tiredness forgotten. One quiet evening, after returning from the market, Chinwe and Amara sat outside their house. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. Amara read a poem from her school book. her sweet voice rising and falling like music. Chinwe listened, her eyes glistening with tears. She reached out, drew Amara into her arms, and held her close. Looking into her daughter's bright eyes, she whispered with a trembling voice, "You are my miracle." Years rolled by in the city, but the wound in Chief Obinna and Adaora's hearts never healed. Time moved. Yet for them, it often felt frozen on that dark evening when their baby vanished. Though the kidnappers had been chased away and some arrested for other crimes, no clear answers ever came about the missing child. Posters had faded, and the public had moved on. Friends, even family, stopped asking about it. But for Obinna and Adaora, the pain remained fresh. The mansion stood tall, surrounded by flowers, fountains, and guards at the gates. To outsiders, it was still a picture of wealth and power. Yet, inside the house, silence ruled. One room, painted in soft blue, remained untouched. It had been the nursery of their baby. The cot was still in place, small clothes neatly folded in drawers, toys lined on the shelves. Adaora refused to change anything. Dusting was done weekly, but no new items were added. The room remained a shrine of memory. Adaora often sat in that space, hugging tiny blankets, her eyes far away. Sometimes she sang lullabies to the emptiness, imagining her child's laugh. Many nights, Obinna found her there, her face wet with tears, rocking herself in silence. "Come to bed, my love," he would say gently, but her answer was always the same. "What if my baby returns and finds his room changed? I must keep it ready for him." While Adaora clung to memory, Obinna buried his sorrow in work. He expanded his businesses, opening new hotels, buying more land, investing in transport companies. People admired his success and called him a strong man. They said, "Chief Obinna turns pain into power." But they did not know what lay behind his firm handshake and calm smile. In truth, he worked not only for wealth, but to keep his mind busy. If he stopped, the silence of loss would crush him. Late at night, when the city lights glowed and everyone slept, he sat alone in his study, staring at the scar on his forehead, the reminder of the attack. He often whispered to himself, "I failed you, my son, but I will never stop searching." For Adaora, the years of emptiness pressed heavily. Friends suggested she adopt. Others said she should focus on the children of relatives. But Adaora always refused. "I carried my child in my womb. No other child can replace him," she said firmly. Her health sometimes suffered. She grew thinner, her eyes hollow. Doctors advised her to rest, but she often ignored them. Her life's rhythm was tied to one hope, the hope that one day, somehow, her child would return. The tragedy tested their marriage many times. Obinna loved Adaora dearly, but the silence between them grew heavy. Some nights, she cried until dawn, and he could only sit by her side helplessly. Other times, she withdrew into herself, saying little for days. Yet, through it all, Obinna never abandoned her. He brought her flowers, took her on trips, prayed with her, and reminded her, "We are still one. We will endure this together." It was that unbroken bond that kept Adaora from falling completely. Years later, when they had almost accepted that answers might never come, an unexpected visitor arrived. His name was Mr. Anene, a private investigator Obinna had once hired years back during the early days of the search. Though the case had gone cold, Obinna had never truly released him. He paid him quietly every year to keep looking. One evening, Obinna sat in his office, signing papers, when his secretary knocked. Sir, Mr. Anene is here. He says it is urgent. Obinna frowned, curious. It had been months since he last heard from the man. Send him in. The investigator entered, his clothes dusty from travel, his eyes sharp with excitement. He greeted respectfully and sat down. Chief, he began lowering his voice. I believe I may have found something worth your attention. Obinna leaned forward, his heart racing. Speak. Anene pulled out a small notebook. In the course of my quiet investigations, I followed a lead from a retired policeman who once worked in the eastern region. He told me of strange whispers from a faraway village. They say a barren woman picked up a baby from the bush many years ago. A child nobody knew where he came from. Obinna's breath caught. He gripped the edge of his desk. What did you say? A barren woman. Anene repeated carefully. She has been raising a child that is not hers. People in the village gossip that she found the baby abandoned, but no one ever knew who left him there. At that very moment, Adaora walked into the room, her wrapper tied loosely around her waist. She had overheard part of the conversation and froze. What did I just hear? She asked, her voice trembling. Anene turned to her. Madam, there is a story of a child, one raised by a woman who could never give birth herself. The tale matches the time your own baby went missing. Adaora's eyes widened. Her hands shook as she covered her mouth. Hope, long buried under sorrow, suddenly rose in her chest. Obinna stood, his voice heavy with both fear and expectation. Are you telling me that after all these years, there might still be a chance our child is alive? The investigator nodded slowly. Yes, Chief. The trail is faint, but it leads to that village. I believe it is worth looking into. Obinna and Adaora stared at each other, their hearts pounding. For the first time in years, hope lit their eyes again. The morning sun rose slowly over the small village. Its golden rays fell on the mud walls and zinc roofs, lighting up compounds one by one. Children carried water pots to the stream. Women swept their compounds, and men set off to their farms. Chinwe was already awake. She sat outside her hut, weaving palm fronds into baskets to sell at the market. Beside her, Amara, now a tall and beautiful teenager, helped her mother peel cassava. Her laughter filled the air whenever Chinwe told her a story. But that peaceful morning was different. Strange footsteps entered the village. At first, only a few villagers noticed. Men in neat shirts and trousers walked along the narrow path, their shoes dusty, but their posture proud. One of them held a notebook. Another carried a small bag. Their accents showed they were not from the village. Children stopped playing to stare. Women fetching water whispered to each other. Soon, word spread. Strangers had arrived. The men asked questions quietly, moving from one compound to another. We are looking for a woman who raised a child that was not hers, they explained. She is said to have found the baby in the bush years ago. The villagers gasped. Some shook their heads, others pointed. You must be talking about Chinwe, one man said. She is the one who carried a baby from the bush many years back. The strangers thanked them and continued their walk. Their steps led toward Chinwe's house. Not long after, a black car rolled into the village square, raising dust as it moved. It was rare to see such a vehicle there. Heads turned, mouths fell open. From the car stepped Chief Obinna and Adaora. Their clothes were rich, their presence commanding. Adaora's eyes searched the village with desperation. Though years had passed, hope burned fiercely in her heart. She held tightly to her husband's hand. Are you sure about this? She whispered. Obinna nodded slowly. This is the lead we've been waiting for. If our child lives, we will know today. The strangers led Obinna and Adaora through the village until they reached Chinwe's compound. Chinwe looked up from her walk and froze. Her breath caught at the sight of so many unfamiliar faces standing at her gate. Amara also paused, confusion written on her young face. The moment Adaora's eyes fell on Amara, her legs weakened. Her hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. The girl standing there had her eyes, her nose, even her smile. She gripped Obinna's arm, whispering, "Obinna, look! She looks exactly like me. She looks like us." Obinna's jaw tightened, his chest rising heavily as he stared. "It cannot be a mistake," he said under his breath. Chinwe's heart raced wildly. She had always known this day might come. Deep inside, she feared that someone, somewhere, might recognize Amara. And now, here it was, the nightmare standing before her eyes. Her hands shook as she stood, shielding Amara behind her. She whispered quickly, "Amara, go inside." But Amara frowned. "Mama, why? Who are these people?" Chinwe's voice broke. "Please, do as I say." Her eyes darted from one face to another. She saw their curious looks, their pointed fingers, their whispers. Fear gripped her soul like chains. "Is this the day I've always dreaded?" One of the investigators stepped forward. "Madam, we hear that many years ago you found a baby abandoned in the bush. We wish to know the truth. Where did the child come from?" The villagers had already begun gathering around, forming a large circle. Some climbed low walls to see better. Others whispered among themselves. Children squeezed forward, eager to witness the drama. Chinwe's lips trembled. She clutched Amara's hand tightly. "Why do you ask me this now? Why after so many years?" Before the man could reply, Adaora stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Her voice shook as she spoke. "That girl, she is mine. I can see it in her face. She is the daughter I lost." Gasps rose from the crowd. Villagers covered their mouths in shock. Some muttered, "So the gossip was true? The child may belong to another family?" Chinwe's knees felt weak. She staggered backward, clutching Amara to her chest. "No!" she cried. "She is mine. God gave her to me. I found her. I raised her. I fed her with my sweat and tears. Do not come here to take her away." The murmurs grew louder. Some villagers whispered, "But the child truly looks like the woman. Their faces are alike." Others argued, "Chinwe has been her mother all these years. How can strangers claim her now?" The air grew tense, charged with confusion and fear. Within minutes, the entire village buzzed. From one compound to another, people rushed to the scene. They spoke in hushed voices, pointing at Amara, glancing at Adaora, watching Chinwe's trembling hands. She may be the lost child of a rich family, but Chinwe found her. She has cared for her since she was a baby. Will they take her away now? What will happen to Chinwe? The crowd grew so thick that people stood on tiptoes to see. The once quiet village square now roared with voices, curiosity, and disbelief. And in the center of it all stood Chinwe, her arms locked tightly around Amara, her eyes filled with terror, her heart screaming silently, "I cannot lose her. Not now. Not ever." The crowd in the village square grew thicker by the minute. Men, women, and children pressed closer, eager to witness the drama unfolding before their eyes. In the middle stood Chinwe, her arms wrapped tightly around Amara, while Obinna and Adaora faced her, their eyes wet with tears. The atmosphere was tense. Every breath seemed to hang heavy in the air. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is the girl really theirs? Her face looks exactly like that woman's. But Chinwe has been her mother for so many years. Nobody knew what would happen next. One of the investigators cleared his throat. His voice rose above the murmurs. There is only one way to be sure, he said firmly. A DNA test. The villagers gasped. Most of them had never heard the term before. They turned to one another, asking what it meant. The investigator explained simply. It is a test that proves if a child is truly the blood of her parents. Science cannot lie. Adaora wiped her tears and nodded quickly. Yes, let it be done. We have waited for years for this truth. I know in my heart this is my daughter. Obinna placed his hand gently on his wife's shoulder, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. We will not take her by force. Let the test speak. Before the villagers could respond, Obinna raised his hand. But first, let me tell you why we are here. The crowd fell silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting. Obinna's deep voice carried through the square. Many years ago, my wife and I lived peacefully in the city with our baby. He was the joy of our home, our answer from God. But one evening, as we drove home, kidnappers attacked us on the road. In the chaos, the nanny carrying our child ran into the bush. She fell, and the baby slipped from her arms. By the time we woke after the attack, our child was gone. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Adaora covered her face with trembling hands as tears poured freely. We searched everywhere, Obinna continued. We placed posters across the city, paid the police, begged strangers for help, but no trace was ever found. We buried ourselves in sorrow, living with silence and pain. His voice cracked as he added, until an investigator brought us here with news of a woman who found a baby in the bush that same season. The villagers murmured louder now. They looked at Chinwe with new eyes. They looked at Amara and back at Adaora, seeing the striking resemblance more clearly than ever. As the story ended, all eyes turned to Chinwe. Her body shook as tears streamed down her cheeks. She held Amara tightly, almost desperately, as though letting go even for a second would mean losing her forever. Her voice broke as she cried out, "Yes, I found her. I found her in the bush, wrapped in dirty cloths, crying, abandoned. I could not leave her there to die. I carried her home. I fed her. I gave her life. For all these years, she has been my child, my pride, my everything. I have no other. She is all I have." The crowd grew emotional. Some women wiped their eyes. Others whispered, "Chinwe has truly suffered. She has loved that girl with her life." Amara stood in the middle of it all, her young face pale with shock. She looked at Chinwe, the only mother she had ever known, and then at Adaora, who wept openly, stretching her arms toward her. Her voice trembled. "Mama, is it true? Are they really my parents?" Chinwe stroked her hair, sobbing. "You are mine, Amara. Whether blood or not, you are mine." Adaora stepped forward, crying uncontrollably. "My daughter, I carried you in my womb. I never stopped praying for you. Look at me. Child, you are my flesh and blood." Amara's heart pounded. She felt pulled in two directions toward the woman who raised her, and the strangers who claimed to be her true parents. Confusion clouded her mind, and tears spilled down her cheeks. The investigator spoke again. "There is no need for more shouting. Let us take samples. The truth will settle this matter." Arrangements were made quickly. A small clinic in a nearby town collected blood from Obinna, Adaora, and Amara. Chinwe sat in the corner of the waiting room. her hands trembling, her face buried in her wrapper. Every second felt like a knife cutting into her heart. Days later, the results arrived. The village square filled again. Everyone wanted to hear the outcome. The investigator held the envelope in his hand. His face was serious. Slowly, he read aloud. The test confirms a 99.9% match. Amara is the biological daughter of Chief Obinna and Madam Adaora. The words struck like thunder. The crowd erupted in gasps and shouts. Some clapped in wonder. Others shook their heads in pity. Adaora collapsed to her knees, wailing with joy. She stretched her arms toward Amara, crying, "My daughter, my child, God has restored you to me." Obinna's eyes filled with tears, but he stood tall, holding his wife as she wept. His chest rose and fell heavily, the weight of years finally lifting. But Chinwe could not stand. Her legs gave way beneath her, and she fell to the ground, her cries tearing through the air. Her arms wrapped around herself, as if trying to hold on to the child, slipping away from her. "No, no, God, do not take her from me. She is all I have," she screamed. Villagers rushed to her, lifting her gently, but her body shook with grief. Tears soaked her wrapper as she clutched the earth beneath her fingers. The square grew silent again, stunned by the weight of the truth. Mothers held their own children tighter. Men shook their heads in disbelief, and children whispered quietly. The truth was out. Amara belonged to Obinna and Adaora, but Chinwe's heart broke in pieces. The village square was still heavy with silence after the truth was revealed. The DNA result had spoken clearly. Amara was the lost daughter of Chief Obinna and Adaora. The people whispered quietly, pointing, shaking their heads in disbelief. Mothers held their children closer. Men sighed deeply, and children's eyes grew wide as they tried to understand what had happened. In the center of it all, Chinwe sat on the bare ground, her wrapper soaked with tears. Her body shook as though every breath tore her apart. Adaora wept loudly, kneeling on the dust, stretching her arms toward Amara. Obinna stood beside his wife, his eyes moist, though his face tried to stay strong. And Amara, the girl caught between two worlds, stood frozen, her young face drenched with tears. Obinna finally stepped forward, his deep voice breaking the silence. "Chinwe," he said softly, yet firmly, "we know you have loved this child. We know you have suffered for her sake. But she is ours. She came from us. She is our blood. Please, give her back to us." Adaora's voice followed, trembling with desperation. She crawled closer, her knees staining with dust. She lifted her hands toward Chinwe. "For years, I have lived with emptiness. For years, I cried into her empty cot, whispering her name, though I never knew if she lived. Now I see her face. Now I know she is alive. Please, woman, do not hold her back from me. She is my daughter, my only child. Please return her to me." The villagers murmured again. Some nodded in sympathy. Others shook their heads, glancing at Chinwe's broken form. Chinwe lifted her head slowly, her eyes swollen from endless crying. Her voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. "You asked me to give her up. The child I carried on my back through storm and sun. The child I fed while I starved. The one who called me Mama when the world mocked me. The only reason I am still alive. You asked me to let her go?" Her words pierced the crowd. Some women began to cry silently. Men shifted uneasily on their feet. Obinna's voice softened. "We are not trying to erase your sacrifice. We will never forget what you did for her. But she is our child by blood. She belongs to us. You cannot keep her forever. Chinwe shook her head violently, clutching Amara to her chest, as if the girl would vanish if she loosened her grip. No, she is mine. God gave her to me when the world called me barren. She is my gift, my miracle. You cannot just appear now and take her away. Amara finally broke. She cried out loudly, her voice full of pain. She wrapped her arms around Chinwe and buried her face in her chest. Mama, I don't want to leave you. You are my mother. You raised me. You cared for me. You gave me everything. I don't know them. I know you. Her cries shook the entire crowd. Some villagers wiped their eyes. Others whispered, "This child truly loves Chinwe. How will she survive without her?" Adaora reached out, tears running freely. "My daughter, I am your real mother. I carried you in my womb. I almost died when I lost you. I have waited for this day for years. Come to me." But Amara shook her head stubbornly, clinging tighter to Chinwe. "No, I want to stay with Mama Chinwe. Please don't take me away." The villagers murmured again, torn between compassion and truth. The square became filled with voices, villagers debating among themselves. She should stay with Chinwe. That woman has suffered too much. No, she belongs to her real parents. Blood cannot lie. This matter would tear someone apart. Chinwe's tears flowed endlessly. She rocked Amara back and forth, whispering through her sobs, "My daughter, my joy, my miracle. How can I let you go?" Obina's voice rose again, firmer this time. "Chinwe, think of the child's future. We can give her education, opportunities, and a life you cannot. You have done your part with great sacrifice. But now, let us take her home where she belongs." His words cut deep because they were true. Chinwe looked at Amara's worn uniform, at her bare feet, at her calloused little hands from helping in the farm. She thought of the years ahead, of her own poverty, of her aging body. Could she truly give Amara the life she deserved? Her heart screamed no, but her mind whispered yes. Chinwe held Amara's face in her hands, looking into the girl's teary eyes. Her lips trembled. "My child, you are all I have. If love alone could keep you, I would never let you go. But I must think of you, not me. You deserve a future brighter than I can give. You deserve everything I cannot provide." Amara shook her head, crying harder. "Mama, please, don't send me away." Chinwe pressed her forehead against hers, her voice breaking. "It is not because I don't love you. It is because I love you too much. I cannot hold you back. I must let you go, even if it kills me inside." The villagers gasped. Women clutched their wrappers, tears falling down their cheeks. Men bowed their heads in silence. Adaora covered her mouth, weeping openly. Obina stood stiff, his face dark with emotion. Slowly, Chinwe released Amara's hands. Her own hands shook violently as she pushed the girl gently forward toward Adaora and Obina. "Go, my daughter," she whispered. "Go with them. They are your parents. This is your chance for a life greater than this village can give. I will always love you." Amara screamed in pain as if her heart was being torn apart. "Mama Chinwe, no, please, don't make me go." She tried to run back into Chinwe's arms, but villagers held her gently, guiding her toward her real parents. The entire square echoed with sobs and murmurs. Chinwe fell to her knees, wailing loudly, her face pressed into the dust. Her body shook as she cried, "God, give me strength. I have given back the child you gave me. Do not let me die from this pain." Obina and Adaora held Amara, tears running freely down their faces as they embraced her. The villagers watched, stunned by the scene before them. Some called it justice, others called it cruelty. But none could deny the truth. The bitter choice had been made. The days that followed in the village were filled with whispers and sighs. People could not stop talking about what had happened in the square. Some said Chinwe was foolish to let Amara go. Others said she was brave, a true mother who gave up her own happiness for her child's future. But inside her compound, silence ruled. The laughter of Amara, which once filled the air, was gone. The small bed where she had slept lay empty. Chinwe often sat there, staring at the wrapper she had used to carry Amara on her back for many years. Tears always filled her eyes. Yet, deep within her broken heart, she knew she had done the right thing. Chief Obina and Adaora understood the depths of her sacrifice. They knew she had given up her life's treasure. They could not take Amara away and leave Chinwe in poverty and loneliness. One morning, they returned to her compound with gifts. Adaora knelt before her, holding her hands. "Sister, you raised my daughter when I could not. You gave her love when I was far away searching. You will never be forgotten." Obina added, his voice firm. "We will build you a new home. We will support you. You are part of our family now. Amara will always know you as her mother." Chinwe wept again, but this time, her tears carried both sorrow and gratitude. "Thank you. All I ask is that you do not cut me away from her life. She is the only joy I know." Adaora hugged her tightly. "You will always see her. You are her mother as much as I am." Weeks later, workers arrived in the village. They cleared land near the stream and laid the foundation for a fine new house. Bricks replaced mud, zinc sheets replaced, one touch. The house stood tall and neat, a symbol of honor to the woman who once lived in a small hut. Villagers gathered daily to watch the progress. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others said quietly, "Chinwe's tears have turned to blessing." When the house was completed, Obina and Adaora furnished it with chairs, tables, a bed, and cupboards. They stocked her kitchen with food, gave her clothing, and promised a monthly allowance. Chinwe moved in with trembling hands, her heart overwhelmed. "God has remembered me," she whispered. "I lost my child, but I have not been left empty." Amara began her new life in the city. She attended a good school, wore fine clothes, and learned in classrooms filled with books and computers. But even with all the luxury around her, her heart often longed for Chinwe. At night, she lay in her soft bed and whispered, "Mama Chinwe, I miss you." She told her new parents stories about the village, how Chinwe carried firewood, how she sang lullabies, how she told folktales by moonlight. Obina and Adaora listened with tears in their eyes. They knew they could never erase the years Chinwe had given. Adaora often said, "You must never forget her. She is part of you forever." After some months, Obina and Adaora returned with Amara to the village. Word spread quickly. The villagers rushed to Chinwe's compound, eager to see what would happen. Chinwe stood at the doorway of her new house, her hands shaking, her eyes wet. She had not seen Amara since the day she let her go. Her heart pounded wildly. Then it happened. Amara spotted her from afar. She broke free from Adaora's hand and ran across the compound with all her strength. "Mama Chinwe," she shouted, her voice ringing with joy. She threw herself into Chinwe's arms, hugging her tightly. Tears flowed down both their cheeks as they clung to each other. The crowd watched silently, many wiping their eyes. In that moment, every doubt vanished. Everyone saw the truth. Motherhood was not only blood, it was love. From that day, Chinwe remained part of Amara's life. She visited the city often. She attended school events, sat beside Adaora during celebrations, and was introduced proudly as Mama Chinwe. In the village, her story became a lesson passed from one mouth to another. Mothers told their children, "Remember Chinwe, the barren woman who raised a child with love." She showed us that true motherhood is not about giving birth, but about giving love. Young women admired her strength. Old men nodded in respect whenever her name was mentioned. No one mocked her again. Instead, they said, she was barren, but she became the mother of a great child. One quiet evening, as the sun set over the red earth road, Chinwe sat outside her new home. Amara rested her head on her lap, smiling up at her. Adaora sat nearby, watching with soft eyes. Chinwe stroked Amara's hair gently, her voice steady though her heart was full. She was barren, but heaven gave her a child to love. And though she returned the child, her name was forever written in the heart of the girl she raised. The most important lesson is that motherhood is not only by birth, but by sacrifice and love. For God answers prayers in mysterious ways, teaching us that true love sometimes means letting go. And that pain can in time turn into a powerful testimony. And with that, dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.